Today is a family Sunday, and we're so thankful to be able to have your family sitting in worship with us in the teaching of God's Word. It is an opportunity. This is one of our regular rhythms where we are intentional, and we're trying to be a multi-generational church. We truly believe in modeling the faith for the other generations and having them sing with you, having them serve during the regular weeks alongside you, having them sit and be able to hear God's Word over your entire family is part of what we want to do. We know there's going to be disruptions. It's okay. We know when we give your kid like 2 donuts on a Sunday morning and then they're asked to come and be quiet and to sit in a church, it's just not going to happen. It's all right. There's going to be disruptions. There may even be discussions. I get to ask them questions this morning, and they're going to respond. It's okay. They're going to be drawing, okay? And they're going to be doing their little activity bags. If you need another one, there's more on the back seats. Adults, if you need an activity bag, I am not offended if you get up and grab one for the kid you have sitting next to you, which happens to be your spouse. We understand. I remember growing up, 2 things of going to church kind of with my family, and then I hate this. But I remember my grandmother always packed like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and goldfish, where I got constantly snack them over to me to keep me awake. And I also remember my mom had this really silky blouse, like that's what you wore in the 80s to church, was this silk material, and it was so cold that I would just lay my head down on it like this, and I was out. I was gone. So there may be distractions. There may be some dozing off. Drew, you're on the front row. It's not happening today, though. It's okay. We're trying to create just some memories and trying to share the faith with a family. And we appreciate everyone working with us on that this morning to be a part of it. I'm going to be in Hebrews chapter 11 today. I encourage you, if you have a copy of God's Word, to turn to it and to join me there. We're not going to be reading the entirety of it. We're going to be focusing on a few key passages that relate to faith. And specifically, what I want to talk about is a faith playlist. And what you may not know, because there's some generational gaps, what the image behind the word faith playlist is. I'm pretty sure half of this auditorium and those who are watching online have no idea what a cassette tape is. It's just there. If I even went back, now vinyl is making a comeback, so you at least know what records are, but 8 tracks and stuff like that. So here's the things, couple questions I want to hear. I want to shout it out, share them with the people around you who hear them. I'll hear a few of them. But I want to know, what was the first concert you ever attended? Go. I heard Carmen. What? Michael W. All you Christian people. Who went to see Led Zeppelin? That's what I had first service. All right, first concerts. I can't. Listen, we're going to be participant. Who? Wendy? I don't even know who that is. Sorry, what'd you have? Kane? The people, I know they sing Lazarus. I love that song, if it's the same people. Anyone else? Jim, thank you. Arlen. Oh, it's not even Arlen. Sorry. Well done, Jimi Hendrix. Where at? In Dallas. All right. So, guys, when I got back into church, because I kept falling asleep, remember, and my grandma had to keep me fed, we left church for a while. My mom remarried, and we married into a Southern Gospel quartet. None of you said the Gaither homecoming concerts. I didn't hear anyone with Naomi and the Seagulls. Okay? Gold City, right here. The cathedrals, no one? All right, sorry. That's how I grew up going to concerts. But how about your first CD, your first 8-track, your first cassette? Like, you had to have it, right? You had to have it. You guys know it? Sarah Hines, you look like you're so eager to share this one. So I was going to ask, but Sarah, you're so eager. Go ahead. Some of you may know her as Sarah Cunkiff, but it's Hines now. They got married, and she's back at our church. Go for it.
My first cassette for my first car was Boyz II Men.
Boyz II Men. What's the car, though, that you put the cassette in?
300 ZX.
Ooh, Mike. Where's Mike? He's teaching in Foundations. He didn't even know. Boyz II Men cassette. All right, Sarah. It was 1992, and there was a really popular song out. And the song was I'm in a hurry and... Who sings it? Alabama. Mark, I saw that. Alabama. The CD was American Pride. And you know how I got this CD? The Sony Music Club. Anyone else got 4 or 5 of them a month with me? And then you had to like pay for them because you always failed to get your mom to ship them back for you. And she's like, why are we getting delinquent notices? Like, you get CDs for a penny. Okay? And listen, that was like the forerunner and where's some of my youth? You're all spread out. That's like the forerunner to Netflix. Like, Netflix first mailed you DVDs. I don't know if you remember that. They just canceled this 2 weeks ago. They're not doing it anymore. But before you were downloading stuff, they would actually mail them to you. And they came from this whole Sony Music Club. And there's other ones. Capitol Music had them too. All right. I want you to open your phones. Everyone open your phones. Take them out. It's okay. Permission granted. And as you're taking out your phones, we're going to do a show of hands. We're going to do Spotify first. Show me the Spotify users. Ooh. Okay. Show me the Amazon Music families. That's us. We're in the minority in the first service too. Amazon Music. We're on there. All right. Here's what we want. I want you to open up your favorite music player. I want to know, and I just say it, just call them out, the number of playlists you have in your account. Anyone have more than 5? All right, more than 20? Let's just jump to 50. Bill, I am really worried about what your hands keep going up there. More than 50 playlists on your phone. You got one right here. Caleb, of course. Bill's hand went down at 50 in the back. All right, how about more than 100? Ellen, no, we're not. Caleb's counting. Caleb's counting playlists. And anyone thinks more? We had Gabby Kroll, I think it's Kroll. Gabby Kroll, first service, had 202 playlists, guys. What? I have 3 playlists. I have a country playlist, I have a folk playlist, and I have a worship playlist. In total, it's only 33 songs. So enamored by music. All right, but here's the thing. Friday was a big day. And if you're in my family, I heard about it as soon as all my kids woke up. Friday was a big day. Something was released on Friday. And we woke up listening to it. And it's probably been downloaded. That's why I said this is truth. Keep your phones out. This is a truth story. What album was released on Friday? Taylor's version of 1989. 250,000 people downloaded it. 3rd highest release for 2023. She has 2 of the top 3 guys. And Scott, I just lost his. It's not Tony Scott. What's the guy's? He also had hamburgers at McDonald's. Help me out, Cadence. What? Travis Scott has the other one. There you go. I forgot about it. Travis Scott. See how easy it is? Taylor released her album. Show of hands. How many of you were part of the 250,000 that downloaded it? I see you back there. Down here in the front, yes? Harper, raise your hand. See, this is what I know. See, Harper's first CD was what? Harper's my 12-year-old. I'm calling her out. She's in service, so I can do this. First CD was Taylor Swift, 1989. Was it not? I'm not lying. I'm on stage. So how important was Friday for us when Taylor's version came out? We listened to it, okay? It's different. She did not have to go to a Gaither's homecoming for her first concert. It didn't happen. Music plays a really important part of our lives. Guys, this is my hope today. When we talk about faith, faith is sometimes ambiguous, right? It's lofty. It's this ultra spiritual thing that we have to try and grab our hands around. And in this text that we're diving into today, I want to try and create and help you understand kind of this playlist of faith. I really want to know that in your life, something is resonating within your ears all the time, all the time, all the time. It is something that amps you up, just like you have a playlist maybe to go work out or before. Maybe you have a meditation playlist. Maybe you have a rage, anger playlist. My hope is that you have a faith playlist. And we're going to dive into Hebrews chapter 11. Let's read just a little bit of this passage. In verse 1, It says, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Two important words, we'll be coming back to that. Sure and certain. This is what the ancients were commended for. And then he begins to talk about some of the ancients and stories. And we're going to jump to verse 6. And in verse 6 it says, and without faith it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. And he continues to tell us stories of the faithful and the actions that took place. And we jump down to chapter 12, verse 1. It says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let's throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Fix our eyes on Jesus, the author, the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. This faith, mysterious, difficult, maybe even missing from our lives, seems lofty. Maybe it's only for the hyper-religious, the really good people, strong people of faith, and we begin to use it as describers. They are a man or a woman of faith. It is a household of faith. It is a people of faith. Or you lack the faith. It can be abused and mistaught at times, right? And sometimes even for ourselves, our prayers can go, God, you are sovereign, you are powerful, you can do all things, demonstrating a lot of faith in who God is. To our prayers can become, God, if you could, would, or can you, God, help out with this? And I'm not sure how you may have defined faith. Maybe as defined for you, if you grew up in some circles, faith was real simple. It was forsaking all, I take him, right? Or it's not faith, but it's frog, right? You can always use the frog, right? Fully reliable on God. You guys remember those? Okay. We define faith. We try to figure it out, and we just know that constantly we're going back and forth. And for me, faith is just simply holding on to the promises of God when life falls apart. That's as simple as I got. Holding on to the promises of God when life is falling apart. Okay? We have these playlists that's going back and forth, and it's in our ears. They're there for us to listen to as we read through these scriptures. I want to pull out some specific tracks, some songs that I want you to be hearing as it relates to your own faith. Okay? It is something that faith is pleasing to God. It's unique in verse 6. It says that specifically, that you can please God. It is a part of what we have. It's actually the verb usage there is that if we are not having faith, it's actually displeasing to God. Okay? Which seems odd because Jesus says that nothing is impossible for us who are believers. But yet, as believers, we have this weird thing that, whoa, can I please God? Is there something that can please him? How do we work through and navigate this? And the writer of Hebrews just tells us, please them. With faith, you can be pleasing to God. And it's like it's birthday season in our house, guys. I mean, it starts like middle of October and it runs all the way through this week. It's my birthday this week. And I get to share it with my son. Hey, bud, it's our birthday on Thursday, isn't it? Yeah. And he has a lot of gifts that he might want for his birthday. If I want to give him good gifts, or Leslie's birthday, who was a few weeks ago, we ask. You want to give your coworker, your family, you ask them, what would you like for your birthday? I want to give you a gift, and you want to encourage them. You want to make sure that the gift is pleasing to them. And if you're really smart, you got an Amazon wish list. And you just tell them, here's what would be pleasing to me. I don't want this, I would like this. And God's sitting here and he's telling us, hey, faith, the demonstration of faith, having faith is pleasing to me. You want to give me a gift? Have a soundtrack of faith all over your life, right? Have a soundtrack of faith that everyone else in the whole world can see that you are marked as a person who has faith. You want to be pleasing to me? Mark your life in such a way as a gift of demonstrating faith. So how do we get there? How do we get there? Here's my big thoughts for you. Faith's playlist, 3 tracks. Number 1 is certainty. Number 2 is surety. And number 3 is that it's going to be pleasing to God. It's going to be pleasing to God. Faith's playlist. So often we come to this concept of faith and we feel like it's going to be a feeling or a formula, or that we could simply reduce it to some pattern of behaviors that we do. And what I find really interesting is how the author of Hebrews walks us through 39 verses of the hall of faith, the people commended for their faith. And the first thing that we need to notice is that our faith is not our faith. Our faith is in the faithfulness of God. If you can explain it, it's not faith. It's just not going on. The author of Hebrews is important. He is showing us that time over time over time, the evidence of things not seen, the hope, the certainty that we can find in our life is a faithful God. Faith, certainty in a faithful God. So often for me, there's times because of emotions and trials and things going on, my faith feels low, way down here. Not a lot of certainty in Jeff's abilities, and Jeff's disciplines, and Jeff's behaviors, and patterns of living. But there's a high degree of certainty on when God has shown up in Jeff's life, in his promises, in his faithfulness, time after time after time. It's like that scratching record that just keeps repeating in my life is God showing up. He is faithful. He is faithful. The substance, the surety, the certainty of our faith is in a faithful God. All right, kids, and by kids, I'm referring to those who are under 10, all right? We're going to play a game. And in this game, I want you to talk back to me, okay? This game, I'm going to say a word, and you have to tell me the opposite of the word. It's an opposite game. Pretty easy, right? Pretty easy? All right, first word, big. Ooh, you're fast. Really good. All right, tall. Good. Ooh. Light. Wow. Okay. So parents, go ahead and give them the extra donut that you stashed away, that you were holding off for yourself. Slide it over to your kids. They get a reward. They pass their assignment. Well done. Now, guys, I have one for the parents. And now they have to answer too. Okay? It's going to be a little bit harder. What's the opposite of faith? Doubt. Say it again. Certainty. You're in first service. It helps. You're really good. Fear. Opposite of faith could be fear. I don't want to do this. I don't want to go there. I don't need it. It is absolutely doubt. But truly, I don't think the presence of doubt indicates an absence of faith. The opposite of faith is certainty. The opposite of faith is when you're going to put yourself in a position that's going to stretch you. It's going to make it difficult for you to do anything on your own, but you have certainty. You have a God who is faithful, so you step into territory that's unknown. You step into patterns of life that are not familiar to you, and you can't do it on your own, but because of faith, there is certainty of a God who is faithful. Over and over and over and over in our life. My faith is in the faithfulness of God. My faith is nourished when I sit in the Word of God and I read stories of God's faithfulness, because the stories of the Bible are full of a faithless people, a broken people, a people who doubted that God was even on the scene in certain environments. They were lacking of things, and God showed up time and time after again, reminding him of his faithfulness. So track one that I want you playing over in your ears, in your life, I want it resonating about your faith, is the certainty of God's faithfulness. In verse 6, the author talks to us, and he uses this phrase of who Jesus is. And we have to be centered in something. With our faith has to be central. It says it's impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe he exists. And this word language that he uses in this word comes to him or draws near to him is a unique image because it references back to the Old Testament and to the Holy of Holies and to the tabernacle, the place where God's presence was at. And it was the concept of drawing near to the presence of God or entering into the Holy of Holies, in which you could only do once a year to have a sacrifice offered for the forgiveness. And the author is using a similar language here. He says, listen, you want to please God. It is the certainty of God's faithfulness, but it is also the centrality of who you believe in. Later on in chapter 12, he tells us two neat images. He talks about a crowd of witnesses that is encouraging you, but he talks to us to look to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. So it's important with faith that we have to understand that it is congregational, it is surrounded by people, but that we also have to have Jesus at the center of what we do. This word sure, faith, sure, is a surety. And it's a legal term that can come up, and it involves when you have three different parties. And it's where party one owes a debt to this other party, party three. And the debt is being called. You have to pay it. There's punishment, there's obligations. And a surety bond is when a third party steps in between the two parties and says, this person's not really worthy to pay you of the debt. Their character, their flaws, their financial habits, they can't do it. But I can pay that debt. I'll make sure it happens. And the author of Hebrews is using that same illustration for Jesus. He tells us that Jesus enters into, in chapter 6, he enters into the Holy of Holies, and once for all, he is a sacrifice. And if we believe in Jesus, a central figure, we have a surety debt. We have a payment for the obligation we can't meet to the person who is demanding holiness. And so part of our faith rhythms, part of the music in our ears is having Jesus and the belief in Jesus Christ central to who we are. He paid a debt. It's a sure thing. So much so that the writer talks to us about where he is now seated. He is now seated at heaven on the right side of the Father. A surety has been paid. It is in your life. It is central to what we are going through. But as you read through those 39 stories, 39 verses, and you get to chapter 12, you have this cloud of witnesses cheering you on. And guys, just plain as I can say, church has to be important to you, to your family. It has to be important. It has to be a priority. There is something about faith congregationally that takes place. You can't do faith in Jesus Christ isolated by yourself. You need others. You need a cloud of witnesses. You need the encouragement of the congregation. You need to hear about what Jesus is doing in the lives of other people. Why? So that you can persevere. Why? So that you can refocus your attention to the central point of the person who is doing the work for you. You need church. You need it more. More. Whatever more can look like for you, you need it more. Hey, and kids, I have an assignment for you. Assignment number 2. Okay? Sometime today, I want you to ask your parents, or I want you to ask your grandparents to share a story of when God showed up for them. Okay? Can you remember it? Write it down. Hey, see, his parents and grandparents, friends and neighbors, adopted kids, whoever you have, we have to share the story of God showing up for us. Our faith is an oral faith. Yes, it is written down in scriptures, but it is also a passing on of our faith to the generation, to the next generation, to the next generation. It is through your witness in a congregation of encouraging others of God showing up with certainty because He's faithful. When is the last time you shared God's faithfulness in your life with a child? His faithfulness to show up when your finances didn't. His faithfulness to show up when your family didn't. His faithfulness to show up in that point of grief and loss and pain, and to be the comforter, to be the spirit of peace, usher in healing. Maybe He's shown up for you with bitterness and anger in your life, and He comes in and He restores how you interact with people. Tell it. Tell it. And if you can't think of it, tell the grandkid, you're here because God has taught me a lot about patience with your dad. I've grown a lot in my patience. And then spoil the fool out of that grandkid. Give him all the sugar, give him all the suckers, and let him know the goodness of who God is. His provision, His protection when you're sitting out on the front yard throwing a ball and you're talking to him about the accuracy and the things that are going on in his life. He says, I want you to be able to catch all that God has for you. He is constantly throwing His goodness. He is showering with your goodness. Help me to help you, grandchild, have hands to receive it. We have to have a faith that is congregational. We have to show up. We have to have more of it. Telling the story of God, the central figure of our faith in what we do. Track number 2 is the surety of Jesus and the encouragement of His church. Needs to be on repeat in our lives. Faith also has a power, it's a force that can transport us to another realm of reality. And I think it's important when you look at chapter 11 and you read these 39 verses of this hall of faith, this playlist of faith, I don't want you to miss what happens near the end of this. In verse 32, the writer tells us, what more can I say? I don't have time to tell you about Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, gained what was promised. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the fury of the flames, and they escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. I wish for each one of you, that's the only faith story you'd ever have. Constant victory. Armies defeated, kingdoms conquered, dead brought back to life. I wish for you so much prosperity. But the author is really careful. And he lets us know that's not always the case with faith. He says, others were tortured. And they refused to be released so that they may gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, and others were chained and put in prison. They were stoned. They were sawed in two. They were put to death by the sword. And they went in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and in holes in the ground. They were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised. So often we use faith, belief, prayer as these emergency exits out of whatever trial we're going through. I just need to pray more. Just need more faith. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, that mountain could be moved. Sometimes we use faith as a coping mechanism, just to sit. This is just a trial. It's okay. It's just a trial. It's just a season. And you cope with your faith. Faith isn't just a medicine. It's also a weapon to wage war with. It's active. Its purpose isn't just to see changes to your circumstances, which the first part of chapter 11 talks about. Sometimes, yes, your faith, the faithfulness of God, the repetition, the certainty that we have of Jesus Christ, your circumstances can change. And sometimes they're going to be sawed in two and tortured and stoned to death. So how do we deal with that? How do we reconcile this difference that takes place, this disappointment maybe that you're having in your life? Track 3, a faith that is pleasing to God has nothing to do with the outcomes. You are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses with Jesus Christ as the central figure of our faith. And the faithfulness of God will help you endure. Run with perseverance. Endure. Get untangled. Step away from. And keep going on. Keep going on. A faith that pleases God is not to do with the outcome. I hope, and it's my prayer, that the soundtrack of your life, what you hear on repeat over and over and over again as it relates to your faith, is the faithfulness of God. Is the surety of Christ. But I also know that there is difficulties and trials. I don't want to paint a picture that it's all going to be good. But I can tell you, He is good. He is faithful. And it's not just faith. It's the faithfulness of a Father that will help me get through it. I want Caleb and Kim, they're out here somewhere. I want them to come up. I want to help illustrate the importance of a faith playlist in your life. I want you to hear the beautiful music and the soundtrack that God is trying to do for you in this thing. Because I believe this reality that we step in, the reality, the grind, the trial, and the blessings, all of chapter 11. The beautiful part about music and the beautiful part about faith is it takes us from the current situation and transforms our reality. We get to see the heavenly realms. We get to see Christ sitting at the throne. We get to see that we are not alone. that we are surrounded with witnesses, that we are encouraged. We have a companion walking alongside this journey with us. So music plays a part of elevating this soul and transforming our reality, and so does faith. So here's what I need. I want you to close your eyes. Now, we're not praying, so don't fall asleep yet. I want you to close your eyes, and we're going to sit in this illustration for just a second. See, every song that's written has a melody. And this melody is simply defined as a sequence of single notes that is musically setting a foundation for the listener. Most of the time, the melody is the most memorable and is referred to as the tune to a song. The melody is powerful. These single notes repeated over and over and over again. So listen as Caleb begins to play this melody. Go ahead. The faithfulness of God gets played over your life. And the beautiful thing with music is that it can transform you and move you over and over again. The melody of God's faithfulness, a foundation of the soundtrack of our faith, played in our ears and in our lives over and over. But songs add harmony, and a harmony of faith is the supporting elements to that foundation. It is what surrounds the single notes and is a combination of notes, chords, progressions that produces a pleasing effect and supports the melody of the song. We take the melody, we add the harmony. You add other instruments. You add the lyrics and the songs and the vocalist. And in your mind, you're transported to a different time and a different memory. And all the cares of your current situation because of the faithfulness of God as a melody. And the congregation surrounding us, pointing us to the centrality and the surety of Jesus as a harmony built with others, transforms the reality of our situation. Our faith takes us from the trials of this earth into the reality of the throne room. We have a story to share, and it is the sharing of I once was blind, but now I see. Through the grace of Jesus Christ, His death, His burial, and His resurrection. A surety, a payment for our sins. That is the soundtrack of faith. It's the playlist. And it needs to be playing every day in your lives. You need to wake up hearing God's faithfulness. You need to share this playlist with your kids, with your grandkids, with your neighbors and your coworkers, because this world that we live in is broken, and people are looking for hope and for faith. And we need to point them to Jesus. I'm ask that you stand to your feet. And as the rest of the band comes up, my hope today was to give you hope and transport you from whatever current reality into the throne room of God. As generation after generation after generation has sung, we sing to God, holy, holy, holy. And what we hope is for generation after generation, we will continue to sing, but it takes an active faith, passing on our faith, passing on the sounds and the melody and the harmony as we do it together as a congregation. Father, however we walked in, may we walked out renewed and refreshed, realigned with your purposes. Father, may the centrality of your Son, Jesus Christ, and His death and His grace offered up for us wash over us. And Father, may the promises of your faithfulness be an ever-playing track of our lives, where we are constantly looking at you, the author, the perfecter of our faith, the faithful one. And Father, forgive us for our lack of faith. And Father, as we sing, as we enter into your throne room, as we worship with our hands outstretched and with our bodies laid out, we are simply saying you are worthy, you are holy. And Father, may that song be said from generation to generation.